Order, order. Welcome back to the Public Accounts Committee on Thursday, the 12th of February 2026. We now move into our second session on the administration of the Civil Service Pension Scheme. Last October, our committee published a report on Capita's planned takeover from MyCSP of the administration of the Civil Service Pension Scheme. This has been overseen by the Cabinet Office. In our report, the committee warned that there was a clear risk that Capita would not be ready to take over the administration as planned, and our predictions sadly have become a reality. Over the past few months, we've heard heartbreaking stories of the hardship suffered by the current and former civil servants since Capita has taken over of the scheme. Many of these people have been left without any income, and departments are scrambling to organise hardship loans to help those affected. Reaching retirement is a significant milestone in anyone's life, but instead this time has become marred by stress and anxiety to many current and former civil servants who have dedicated their careers to public service across this country. After this poor start, we sincerely hope that the Cabinet Office will be able to work with Capita to resolve some of these problems, and today we'll be questioning representatives from Capita on what has gone wrong and what they're going to do to put it right. So, Richard Holroyd, if you would just introduce yourself for the record, and then Chris Clements, please.
Good morning. My name is Richard Holroyd. I am the Chief Executive of Capita's Public Service Division. I've been in Capita for 5 years. Prior to that, I worked in utilities, and for 22 years prior to that, I was a soldier. This is Chris Clements.
Hi, I'm Chris Clements. I'm the Managing Director of Capita Pension Solutions. I run our pensions business that looks after 7.5 million pensioners across 250 pension schemes from both public sector and private sector.
Thank you both very much. So can I start by really perhaps, I'm afraid, citing two very sad cases. So the current problems with the administration of the Civil Service Pension Scheme have impacted, as I said in my opening remarks, thousands of dedicated and hard-working civil servants up and down the country. This includes people working in this house and this building. And I learned of a tragic case this morning concerning a house servant who suffered difficulties and hardship when trying to access their pension, which marred the final months of their life. With then in more public domain, the 27-year-old Kiva Jennings case, a former employee of the HMRC who has terminal cancer and now months to live. From December last year, she'd been tracing Capita for her ill health retirement pension. This was paid almost immediately after her MP, quite rightly, Gregory Campbell, raised her case in PMQs, and Capita phoned Kiva 20 minutes after Mr. Campbell's invention. So did you only contact, either of you, Kiva, because of the deep embarrassment brought upon you by Mr. Campbell?
If I may, I'm going to start with an apology. This service is not meeting, in any sense, the service that Capita seeks to deliver or the pensioners and the members of this scheme deserve. And we absolutely recognise that, not least because of these cases, and my colleague will give you the details of that one in a moment. We are really aware of the hardship that some of the members of this scheme are going through, and we are also aware, as you identified, that this is a major life milestone which needs to be managed correctly and without fault. We inherited a scheme that was in need of reform, and we have inherited a huge backlog of some 86,000 cases, some 16,000 unread emails, and some of these cases that you will raise today were in that backlog of 16,000 unread emails. We're aware of 12,000 members on the 1st of December that were due a payment and hadn't been put on the system for payment. And we've inherited some 20 million lines of corrupt data. So we've inherited a service that is in distress, and we absolutely recognise that is our problem to solve, and we're absolutely committed to solving it. So if I may, I'll pass to Chris to go through the details of Miss Jennings.
Before you do, I'm sure that civil service pensioners will welcome that apology. I think what the purpose of this hearing is not only to dissect what has gone wrong, but also to actually understand how quickly all these problems can be put right, because we don't want people out there suffering.
That is absolutely our priority. We now own this problem. It's ours to fix at pace in partnership with the Cabinet Office, who are supporting us through this process.
Thank you very much. Chris Clements, please.
Can I also take an opportunity to apologise to every single member that has had to wait longer than is acceptable? When you are dealing with your pension scheme, you are almost always dealing with your scheme at a point of incredibly high emotional stress. So whether it be considering retirement, at retirement, death in service or bereavement. And we at Capita Pension Solutions have highly trained staff who deal with that and processes designed to deal with those cases. The particular case that you raise, so before transition, that a quote had been conducted by our predecessor, but there was no case open. So on the 86,000 cases, there was no case for that case. However, there was an unread email of one of the 16,000 unread emails pertaining to that case. Before PMQs, we had been notified by Cabinet Office of this case, and we had identified that there was no case and had begun to open a case that should have been there on inheritance. And as soon as we had the documents and could follow the scheme rules, we made the payment as fast as possible. We have a joint plan with Cabinet Office to go through and we have agreed a prioritisation of those cases which have the most potential for member detriment, and to go through and assure that they get the right amount of money at the correct amount of money at the correct time and in the correct way. The problem is that the 12,000 people who were already owed money on the day of transition, and the combination of that and the data errors and the fact that those 12,000 people often did not have the paperwork or the cases properly open, means that we are working jointly with Cabinet Office to go through every one of those cases to make sure that we understand what payment it should be made and make that payment as fast as possible.
It seems to me that this is probably your biggest priority, because if there are cases out there that you haven't got records of, you don't know what hardship is, and we certainly don't want to cause people extreme hardship in those, as you say, transitional moments of their life. So the real question, either of you don't mind, is when do you think you will get to the bottom of this 12,000 and be in a reasonable position to be able to say we have ascertained that we've got records for everybody in the scheme?
So for the people that were outstanding, the majority of the people for whom they have had a quote or we are aware of them, there is and the most distressing cases, which is the death in service, the ill health retirement, the retirement with a quote, we have worked with Cabinet Office so that every one of those members will receive either their lump sum or their payment by the end of February. And in the meantime, they are able to get a hardship loan from their department. Once we have done that, we will then take those people who should be in receipt of a recurring retirement payment, and we will take us another period of time to get all of those people into their normal receipt of payment.
So this comes to the basis of the question, really. If they're not on your system and you've not got to the end of those 12,000 emails, you can take all the action you like, but you won't know they're there. How are you really going to get to the bottom? And then everybody who's entitled to either a lump sum or a pension payment from the scheme, you will know about.
So on the 16,000 emails, we will have Cabinet Office surge resources have been provided, and they are reading those emails at the moment, and by the 28th of February we'll have read every single one of those emails. Any emails that then trigger a creation of a new case, that would have created that case. We are working with the Cabinet Office Task Force to talk to every HRD in every employer to check that the death in service cases, the ill health retirements that we have, tally with what they think should be there. And we are then putting all of that back into the plan that we are then working with to be held against on the burn down of those cases to ensure everyone gets their money. What I would also add is that what we have done is, before we took over, we identified the workforce that the predecessor had. We went through a normal TUPE consultation. We brought over 330 staff from the previous administrator, but we already identified that wasn't going to be enough to provide the service that members should expect. So we had recruited an additional 180 people for day one. Since then, we then realised that the work in progress we inherited wasn't just work in progress, it included incredibly old cases, as you have seen from many of the examples in the press. And so therefore we, as Capita, have surged an additional 130 people into the operation and worked with Cabinet Office for them to provide another 150. So today we have nearly 750 people working on it, as opposed to the around 400 that were there before transition.
Thank you. That's a really helpful introduction. Clive Betts, please.
Yes, I'm sure we're going to follow quite a lot of these issues up in more detail. When did you realise that these emails existed that were unread?
We were aware before transition that there were some emails, but we did not see the emails or the quantity of the emails until the data was migrated to us on transition.
Which was the 1st of December.
1st of December.
1st of December. You had all the emails then?
So we received a bulk download from the previous administrator.
On the 1st of December?
Yes.
Which was the go-live date. So at go-live.
10 weeks later, you still haven't read them all?
So as when we received the data and have been unpacking the data we received, we have then been identifying the highest priority cases and working through them, through that highest priority case with the resources available. And we have worked with Cabinet Office on what is the priorities and how do we get through all the cases in as fast a time as possible.
Simple question. 10 weeks after you had the data, you still haven't read all the unread emails?
That's true. It's taken, as you will appreciate, some time. Once we discovered exactly the size of the backlog, exactly the number of issues, we then had to mobilise to find people, train them, and get them onto the systems.
You had no knowledge of these emails before the 1st of December?
We knew that there were emails that existed, but not the quantity or the content.
It is unheard of to receive that many unread emails.
How many do you think there were then, if you knew there were some?
We did not have we do not have. We knew that there were mailboxes with unread emails. We didn't know how many were there.
You didn't ask questions before then?
We did ask questions, and we asked questions about the information that we would receive, both of the emails and the data. And we had tested the data, and we tested the data migrations, but we hadn't seen the actual emails.
On transition of any contract, you always have a work in progress backlog. That's exactly as you'd anticipate, because the service has to run up to the day that we then take over. So we would anticipate normally an unread email backlog of about 200, because that would be reasonable, because the service...
You anticipated? Did you ask questions?
We did ask questions.
So we did ask questions, and we did go through mock data loads, but the open case element and the emails didn't come across until the final transition.
But you knew there were unread emails?
We did.
You didn't ask questions about how many beforehand?
Did ask questions about how much.
What was the answer you got?
I think we will have to write to you with that exact answer.
Well, we didn't get, as you can tell, we didn't get the answer that there were 16,000 unread emails, because we'd have immediately started to reinforce the work staff beforehand. We can't tell you, sitting here now, precisely what number of emails that we were told.
It would be helpful to have that answer to
yes,
understand it, because I want to go now and just say, on the 7th of July, you told the committee all business processes will be operational by this date, that's the 1st of December, and members will receive an improved operational service thereafter. Now, right, you might say since July things change, but on the 25th of November, you basically reiterated that commitment that the changes we implement will significantly enhance pension administration services for members. That's the 25th of November. Now, if you knew there were missing or unread emails around of any significant quantity by then, that's just less than a week before you took over. Should you be making those promises and those commitments at that time?
So we on the 1st of December, we stood up a service that was able to process all of the case types and all of the transactions, and we were expecting to receive a workload which is the normal last in, first out, the first in, first out process of any back office operation. What we realised when we were live and had received the actual data is that there was many much older, the amount and the age of them was much greater than we'd expected. And as soon as we identified that, we began to work on accelerating our plans to deal with that.
So just want to underline here, all the functionality that we committed to went live. So in terms of the machinery was there. Our predecessors were taking about 1,300 calls a day. We immediately from the 1st of December started receiving 5,000 calls. So they became really clear to us that there was a huge backlog, a huge pent-up demand for people who were expecting answers. So the commitment we made on the 25th of November was made in good faith of taking over an operation that was in normal run form. We were asking questions about confirmation of the size of the backlog, confirmation of the numbers of open cases. As you can tell, we didn't receive an answer that said there are this many at this size. Because if we had, we'd have already started, firstly, raising flags, and secondly, recruiting to reinforce.
I think we might go on a little later to explore not merely what you knew, but what you should have known before this process began. Because clearly you made commitments to the committee on the 25th of November that you couldn't possibly keep, could you?
In hindsight, with the knowledge that we had on the 25th of November, we made those in absolutely good faith, that the functionality would be there, we would be able to operate a service. There is increased capability, applications of things that will flow over the next few weeks in line with the plan that we committed to the Cabinet Office, which allows more self-serve. But what we committed to and what we delivered was an operating process. But as I say, the backlog overwhelmed us. What we believe was happening was that our predecessors were saying, call back on the 1st of December because ask the new service. And what we got was people calling on the 1st of December asking the new service. And at that point, we were overwhelmed. And in addition, as the MPs, and we're very grateful to the MPs for raising the casework, because that's helped us prioritise those things that were in the backlog that you can't immediately see.
Well, okay, we'll come on to that in a minute, I think, a bit further. All I would say is that, yes, as MPs, of course, we take pictures on behalf of our constituents, but we're not a substitute for a proper system.
Absolutely not.
And, I think we'll come on and explore what Capita should have known in the 2-year period, Chair, in due course.
Well, I think while it's so current, I think I would like to understand a little bit more about what you should have known and what you did about it. So let's go back a bit. You tendered for this contract in 2023. So you must have done some considerable due diligence before you tendered, because otherwise you wouldn't know how much it was going to cost you. And you as a firm, Capita, have had considerable experience with other pension schemes. So you know a little bit about managing big public sector pension schemes. Presumably thereafter, after 23, you were constantly in touch with both Cabinet Office and my CSP about their workloads. So you should have been tracking on a constant basis how many emails were coming in, how many calls they received, how many people were not getting their death in service benefits, their statements, and so on and so forth. So surely it should not have come as a surprise to you on the 1st of December when you took it over that there was this huge outstanding backlog, because you should have been involved with my CSP. You should have known what backlog there was out there.
We did work with my CSP as the incumbent and with Cabinet Office for the implementation period to understand the service, and we did stand up all of the processes required, all the technology required to provide the service. In terms of the open cases, we did receive data of the number and type and some analysis, but none of it was ever conclusive, nor did it ever show us the true entire picture. And what happened on the day one is that we were assuming that we would receive the normal work in progress, being the most pressing cases.
But you presumably asked questions. You must have had doubts in your own mind that you were getting satisfactory answers, and presumably there's a written trail of all those questions that you answered. So are you saying that you were, in effect, lied to about this backlog, or didn't you answer the right questions?
We were surprised at the exact nature of the backlog on Go Live. And
well, okay, let's stop you there. You were surprised. I get that. But why were you surprised? Were you lied to about the information you'd been given, or did you not ask the right questions?
We were asking, throughout the transition period, we were asking for more and more details about the situation.
We asked, and were making clear that we were concerned about the level of the backlog because we could tell that it may not be as we were anticipating. It's not for me to say whether the veracity of the answers, but what's apparent to us and became apparent to us at Go Live was that the information we were given was not the whole picture.
So the proof of the pudding of that statement will be in the written correspondence that you've got. Presumably you're going to have to produce to the Cabinet Office, because otherwise they're going to hold you accountable for that.
And we are in those conversations with the Cabinet Office right now. We've been completely transparent about where we are. We have a task force led by the second PUS from HMRC working with us.
On to that.
And we have been completely transparent about everything we received.
Because this is so important, and particularly to the scheme members who are not getting the service that they want, as to what you knew. So the go live date was put back from September to November to December. So somebody, you, the Cabinet Office, or both of you, must have had an idea that it was an emerging problem. Why did you agree to take it over on the 1st of December if there were all these unknowns that you didn't know?
The 1st of December was always the planned go-live date. You can see from the fact that we understood that the service, we needed to provide a better service, which is why we recruited 180 additional people before go-live. So we had an understanding that we had to provide a better service, and we had an understanding that we needed to increase the staff. It is the scale of the issue that we didn't understand, and when I say scale, I mean the complexity of the age of the cases and the way that they needed to be worked. The only thing that I would take exactly the same steps then as we have now, I just would have done them sooner. So the surge staff and the task force that we're running at the moment are the correct steps to resolve this. The only regret I have is that we should have done that sooner.
So I think probably we're going to ask the Cabinet Office after this hearing for some of this written information in confidence if necessary, because I can understand it may well be commercially in confidence, but I think we are going to want to see what exactly you did ask them and what replies you got to see whether you were given the correct information or not, because I think that's really important that we know that. So you said earlier, Richard, that you inherited a backlog of 90,000 cases, but what does it stand at today?
I'm going to turn to my friend who has all the details.
So we now have around 120,000 open cases today.
So it's got worse. Since you took it over, it's gone from 90 to 120,000 cases.
I think that the nature of the cases, if I could is very different. So in any back office operation, there are normal cases that are working through the system. So for instance, today we have 600 change of addresses that are working through the system. When we took over, we expected the 59, 60,000 cases to be of that normal work in progress nature. And what we discovered that it is not that they were the first in, first out, they were the last 4 or 5 weeks. These were months and sometimes even years old, and it was that nature that surprised us. Whereas today, the new work in progress that's been created since is that normal kind of work in progress that any back office has as they work through their cases. I would also add that any transition, any back office operation has a speed to competency where you bed in and you improve and you increase the speed of your throughput, and we are going through that normal speed to competency which was in the original plan. So there was always a small period of time where you get faster and faster, and we are going through that continuous improvement at the moment.
When do you expect this to stabilise and you can start to make inroads to get it down to an acceptable level?
The joint plan that we have with Cabinet Office is to take the 4 member-facing and then the 2 VES processes, which are the 6 key processes.
VES being voluntary exit scheme processes.
To take those 6 processes and they are the ones which have the most potential harm for members and the most potential hardship, and so we are getting those cases burnt down. We are working to ensure that all of the most serious cases that they have had some money by the end of February, and that all of those cases returned to a normal service level by the end of March.
How many people are waiting for you to provide information on their pensions to help them make important life decisions at this moment?
So of the 90,000 that we inherited, almost all of those were waiting for something, an important piece of information, or for it to be set up in payment.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Anna, I may have cut across you. I didn't have it on my list. I'm sorry, it was a change
we'd swapped it. But
yeah. Is there anything further you want to add to this?
If I may just briefly,
yes,
Chair, if it's okay. So, as we've said, many of us as MPs were very well aware, even before the transition, of the problems that people who've worked their lives in public service were finding with my CSP. And obviously there was this promise that things would get better, yet for many of them things have got a lot worse. And I suppose, I took part in a Westminster Hall debate with many other fellow members, and it was really heartbreaking hearing the litany of individual cases that all of us were handling. So I think two things come from these stories of, for example, a constituent of mine made a claim back in May, was having those difficulties with my CSP, long waits on the phone, unanswered emails, documents going missing. Given that we already knew that, I do find it very surprising that you, in this transition period, didn't know. And clearly those problems have continued, with the portal not allowing the login, phone conversations, getting cut off mid-call. And obviously underlying all of this is that financial hardship, extreme worry about how people are going to pay their bills. So I think I do just want to press you on what mitigating actions you're taking to alleviate this hardship.
I'm going to reiterate an apology, and I am receiving personal emails from members of the scheme, and I'm writing back to each one myself, because I think the people in the scheme deserve a better service, and they've served their country, and we are not delivering what they need or deserve. Chris will take you through the precise detail of each of the mitigation actions.
So the principal mitigating action before we took over was the 180 additional people we hired. Since we took over and realising that things were worse, we've had an additional 130 and brought on the surge resource of 150 from HMRC. The focus has been on, as agreed with Cabinet Office, those people with the highest potential detriment. So if I can explain on the call centre, for instance, last week, if you indicated to us on the call centre that you were reporting a bereavement, then your average wait time was 47 seconds. If you indicated your call type was financial hardship, your average wait time was 4 minutes and 40 seconds. 43% of the calls we took last week were on those two priority lines. What that has meant is that if for people who are not on those two priority lines, there have had to be unacceptable waits, and I am very sorry for that. As we continue to go through the historic cases and get people their money, the call volumes are coming down. As Richard said, we were anticipating 7,000 calls a week. On our peak week, we got 25,000 calls, and we were not ready for that volume. As we are resolving the back office, the call volumes are already dropping, and we are bringing on more and more people, skilled people, into the front office to answer the queries. And by the end of February, 80% of calls will be answered within the service level, which is 30 seconds. So we are prioritising the people in the most hardship. We are prioritising the people at biggest risk of detriment. And then we are very sorry that for other people that means that there are waits that are too long.
Sorry, I really want to press on how you're mitigating the financial hardship, because I'm hearing, and you've had to make some prioritisation, and clearly, for people who you've put in this priority category, but it matters too for somebody who's reduced their working hours and was expecting to be able to defer and be receiving regular payments. The person who's expecting a lump sum, the person who's just already retired and is expecting their regular pension payment. All of these people are in financial hardship because month to month they do not have the savings to just pay their bills. So what are you doing with the Cabinet Office? There's been talk of financial loans. We heard from our colleagues at the NAO that they themselves are putting, financial loans in place to help some of their retirees. What are you doing to mitigate this real financial hardship that people are facing today?
Yes, so, absolutely. We are worked with the Cabinet Office to design the hardship process. When a call comes through or a contact comes through to express the fact that they are in financial hardship, they are asked to, as the process designed, they go back to the department that they work for, and that department will give them a hardship loan. For anybody who has left the civil service more than 12 months earlier, we as Capita are then making sure that they get money as fast as possible in the same sort of way as the hardship loan works. And then we have prioritised getting everybody their lump sums by the end of February, which will mean that everyone who has a quote and has gone through all of the necessary rules and paperwork will get their lump sum by the end of February. The combination of that work on the lump sums and the work with Cabinet Office on setting up the hardship process within the departments, and us setting up a hardship for people who are deferred members who left the civil service many years ago, those three mean that everybody should be able to have access to funds immediately, and everyone will then have their lump sums as fast as possible.
Okay, and just finally on the recurring, you've talked about the end of February for these prioritised cases to get payments, and that will go into sort of a normalised process by the end of March. I don't think I heard a date by which you expect the recurring retirement payments to be normalised. So
we are looking for, as long as all the paperwork is there and we have all of the information, to have everyone on to normalised payment within 2 months of them receiving their lump sum.
2 months of receiving.
And the hardship process will continue in that interim as well. So
that would be the end of April. I'm just trying to be as specific as possible.
April, yes.
Thank you.
So, if I ring up your helpline now, I'm not in one of those 2 priority cases, how long will I be waiting?
The average wait time last week for not in those priority cases was 1 hour and 55 minutes.
1 hour and 45 minutes?
55, yes.
To every person, their query is important.
Yes.
Anna's indicated some of the categories. I mean, even if I just want to get a statement, I'm thinking about retiring or taking a redundancy scheme, I just want a statement. When are we going to see that come down to an acceptable level?
Our commitment is to have 80% of all calls answered within 30 seconds by the end of February.
Is that realistic? I mean, if you're waiting 1 hour and 45 now, to have it at the end of February is only a fortnight off. Is that realistic?
So we have additional staff joining every week as we increase the size of the call centre. But the really material element is that, as I said, 47% of calls we took last week were on one of those priority lines. And as we go through February and we resolve those priority cases to make sure that everyone in hardship has some money and every bereavement is recorded, that means that there will be more contact centre agents available for the other kinds of queries.
Which are inevitably shorter to handle, so it means you can increase the volume loan.
So when do you think your system will be running sufficiently well that no department anywhere that covers civil servant pensioners will need to start, will be able to stop making hardship loans because there won't be any necessity for them?
So we will have all of the priority cases in normal payment, as we said, by the end of April.
Right, okay, right. Matt,
thank you, Chair, yes, and thank you for coming to speak to us. I just want to talk a little bit more, if we can, about this preparatory period and the state of readiness when you got to the go-live. So there was a 2-year transition period, so how come you weren't ready for it, given that you're speaking to my CSP and the Cabinet Office at the same time?
So over the 2-year transition period, we set up the secure IT environments, we set up the processes, the systems, we designed the onboarding training, we understood the scheme rules, we put in place all of the calculators and the automation and the pro forma work stacks that you are required to run a complicated DB scheme. As we said earlier, my business runs 250 pension schemes across the private and public sector, so this is something we do regularly. Civil service is a very large scheme, but this onboarding schemes is something we do regularly. The key element of any large outsourcing position like this is that you don't take the active work on until you TUPE the staff and do the final transition of data. So until that last go live weekend, you can practice, you can go through the systems, you can design the processes, you can do the onboarding training, but until you have the live cases and until you have the staff transferred, you can't work on the current open cases. The other thing that we did in the transition period was we did dress rehearsals and we did dry runs of the data migration and we did analysis of the underlying database. I mean, one of the things we haven't mentioned is that there are more than 20 million errors in the underlying database, and more than 70% of all current cases that come in require manual data remediation because the underlying data is incorrect. And whilst sometimes it might not matter that you don't have a piece of information, if that piece of information pertains to your age or your service history, then it will turn into a real financial difference in the amount you receive. So understanding those data errors that have accumulated over the years and finding a way to triage them and correct them as cases come in was a key part of the transition process.
Thank you. The report, the NAO report, says that there were a relatively small number of companies operating in this sector, and clearly it's not uncommon for pension schemes to transfer from one to another. So while I take on board what you're saying, it still seems to me that 2 years is quite a long period of time to be able to anticipate any challenges and difficulties that are likely to arise, notwithstanding that you perhaps weren't expecting the scale, but what's the point of the 2 years if you're not able to unpick those kind of problems from transitioning from one to another?
Yeah, so on the face of it, a 2-year period involves a whole raft of commercial activity, followed by program activity, followed by building systems, and as Chris described, data sets, and then practice with dummy data, etc., etc. So it would appear to be a very, very long time. It's a 1.7 million member scheme. But there is some realities here about the commercials of this. We, as a business process services company, regularly hand over and receive from our competitors. We work very closely with them. But normal commercial processes are that you don't get to see all the inside workings of somebody else's operation. What you receive are data sets of the other operation. But we don't reveal, there isn't the opportunity to go and sit in and completely immerse yourself in how that operation is working. So this was a service transition, of which we do many, and there is a normal process. And part of that process is that the authority, the department that commissions the service, of course, can see into both sides of the process. So during this stage, we went through that normal process. And as Chris has reiterated, we knew that there would be some degree, because we expected it, and it's not unusual that as one service starts to decline and the other one picks up, that you have a slightly higher than normal backlog. That would be, in all the things we do, that would be normal process. So hence you plan for it. You always add a bit more, because you don't want the service to not go live correctly. So we did exactly that. We added a bit more, we added a bit of fudge factor on the top of that. And that's what Chris has described. You also receive on TUPE the people that really are in the process and understand it, and they're the live experts who understand in detail. And of course, they TUPE it across to us on the 1st of December. So at that point, you're dealing with the frontline managers and expertise who then can start to tell you in much more detail what's going on in the operation. So that's normal processes. So I know it appears like there's 2 years, but as I say, the way that commercial operations run and commerciality, things commercial in confidence, means that you can't sit alongside, see the database, see the back office, see everything. That's not how the process works.
I accept that there is clearly commercially confidential information and you're operating in a commercial sector as a competitive environment. The very fact that you're tendering for somebody else's business, reveals that. But this is not an uncommon problem, it seems. 2014 and 2015, the transition had gone the other way. Similar problems had taken place. And I understand that individual staff may be different. It's a real benefit and appreciate it unlocks having that TP across of those staff unlocks the ability to look into more of the detail, and staff will change over a period of time. But organisational knowledge and expectation of being able to deal with these kind of issues must exist, and isn't that part of what that 2-year period is about in terms of trying to unearth and reveal?
So if I may, the 2014 transition was completely different. So in the 2014 transition, we were just doing a small service, a small payroll service on the side of the main principal administrator. We weren't the principal administrator. This was a complete software change and a rebuilding into a modern, highly automated, AI-enabled architecture. To give you a sense of scale, I had more than 500 software developers, calculation architects, actuaries, project managers, program teams, process experts working on the implementation. We have put in place. We across all of my clients, across the private sector and the public sector, we have a standard way of working on our proprietary software that allows us to manage the most complicated defined benefit pension schemes that exist in the UK. And that 2-year project was to ingest what is a very complicated scheme with 1.7 million members, more than 300 different employers, which is every department and every quango and every museum and every other employer in the UK government, and with multiple sections and multiple complex types of service with multiple different benefit types. We ingested all of that and have understood it and designed processes and stood up the processes to be able to do all the transaction types and get all the work done. As we said, the only difference to the normal is that you would expect a work in progress to come over, but not the age. And age is really important in pensions because the age of a case is a very close proxy for the emotional content and the potential for harm. So there is a humongous difference between a work in progress position where your SLA, your service level agreement is 10 days and the work in progress is 20 days worth of work, and what might look like numerically the same work position, but there is an element in 10 days and then an element that's a year old. That is a very different work in progress, but numerically look exactly the same.
That is why I'm so concerned about people getting hold of you on the telephone system and emails, because you might not necessarily have heard from those people before, and they may have been some considerable age of their problems. And that is what I want to really be assured this morning, that if somebody rings up, not in those 2 priority categories, emails you, that they will get service. Well, you tell me, by email or by telephone, when will they hear from you? They might be desperate.
So Geoffrey, the way that would be best to contact us is on the website. There is a contact us section which you do not need to have registered, you do not need to have logged on. You go to the contact us. That contact us form is in, you can write to us. Copilot then automatically reads and understands, identifies priority cases and puts them in the work queue. By doing it that way, the AI tool allows us to make sure we are very instantaneously identifying those cases with the most detriment. That is a completely different solution to the sitting in an unread email inbox, and that is part of the transformation that we are making. So if I could please recommend that any member who wants to contact us uses the Contact Us form on the front page of the website, and that will be immediately read by AI and be stacked and prioritised and then read by the human to get the work done.
That is really helpful. Can you make sure that we will do our best to publicise that, but could you do make sure that you publicise it in all the relevant
we absolutely will, and we're working with Cabinet Office to make sure it's on every statement we make.
It's worth mentioning we are fast tracking as much technology to support this, because simple elements like change of address should be something that doesn't involve anybody on a phone. So therefore, taking away the volume from the phone lines for the people who are have an issue into just standard process. So we're deploying as much AI as we can, as fast as we can, in order to resolve those cases and create the capacity to deal with the most important cases.
Thank you very much. Clive Betts.
Yes. When did this co-pilot arrangement come in place?
1st December.
1st of December. So we've had it all the time?
Yes.
We haven't created new unread emails. So everything that when people were contacting us, and that's why we've been pointing to this form, meant that we haven't contributed to the backlog of unread emails. We have a backlog that we mentioned earlier that inevitably has gone up as we received the surge of pent-up demand, and that's what Chris dealt with earlier.
Well, it's interesting. I have a case of my constituent, Darryl Howe, who was promised, and this came in after you took over, on the 1st of January, he'd get his lump sum, everything would be sorted out. He explained very clearly he needed that to buy a house that he was contracting to buy, and he would become homeless if he didn't manage to process this within a short period of time.
Yes.
Absolutely heard nothing. So whatever Copilot was doing, it wasn't doing what it should have been doing.
Copilot in that case would be a case of reading that what we're referring to is no, to Sir Geoffrey's point, not being read. That piece of work would have been read and gone into the work stack. So Chris?
So Mr. Howe, his case is in the prioritised work stack, and he received his lump sum was processed yesterday.
Yes, he's contacted me this morning to say, miraculously, the money's arrived. I'm sorry, but he sort of asks, and I think it's the case of Kiva Jennings that we talked about earlier, that Gregory Campbell MP raised. Would they have actually got anywhere with their cases unless members of Parliament have raised it?
If I may, absolutely. The information that members of Parliament provide is incredibly useful to understand where people are in financial hardship, but we are not prioritising cases because they came to the MP. What we are doing is prioritising cases as agreed with the Cabinet Office on financial harm. So I am very grateful for you helping us understand where harm exists so we can prioritise, but his case would have been in the prioritised list anyway as someone we are getting the money to.
But nobody told him. He's getting no communication from you at all.
I can only apologise for us not communicating properly, and it must be I understand it is very stressful when you're not communicating. We are absolutely focused every day on making sure that we get as many people their money as fast as possible.
Sorry, I just feel that I'm raising one example, but I just suspect it's not the only example that exists. And just a message back to say, we've got your message, Mr. Howe. There is a bit of delay. We are having problems, but we'll make sure you get it in time. Something like that would have been really helpful.
So we are definitely writing. I don't want to speak about specific cases, but we are writing and acknowledging.
You're absolutely right. We have a duty of care to respond and say we've received. As we're getting more and more control of the operation, that's exactly what we're set out to achieve. As I keep repeating, this is not a service of the right standard. It's not one that we're proud of.
Well, let's look at the standards then. You agreed to meet a target of dealing with all the restoring death in service benefits by the 12th of February. Have you done that?
So we are aiming to. We will get the death in service back into service levels at the end of February, if I may.
Sorry, you committed to the 12th of February with the Cabinet Office, I understand it.
So we committed to the end of February, and since we originally started the planning process, we've identified more cases that we were not aware of on death in service. There are, since we took over...
You agreed with the Cabinet Office the 12th of February, that's what our report says. Is that right?
We don't have a copy of that report, sir.
Since we took over on the 1st of December, we have assisted more than 105 people who are in death in service to receive their money, and on transition we identified there were 270 death in service cases in the backlog, and since then we've identified an additional 138 cases that weren't in those initial numbers. So we are working dynamically to make sure that every case is found, identified, and then worked on as fast as possible.
What we're getting is a list of your problems, not of the solutions you're going to deliver. So you're not going to hit the 12th of February target. Obviously, it's tomorrow, so you're not.
We will get all the death and service payments, death and service back into normal service levels at the end of February.
16 days after the commitment.
We don't have visibility of that date. What I'm at a point we would definitely have said all the cases that we had live at that point would be done by the 12th of February, perhaps. What Chris is highlighting is, as we keep uncovering, there are more cases. So making a commitment that says we will have cleared all the commitments by the 12th of February, as we're discovering more, it's very difficult to clear a case within hours of finding it.
Let's get the exact reference. Cat Little, the Permanent Secretary at the Cabinet Office, wrote to me as chair on the 2nd of February, setting out milestones. One of those priority areas was to set up priority milestones, and she says we have strict targets to restore service for the most vulnerable cases, death in service by the 12th of February, and ill health by the 27th of February. So are you telling us that you're not going to meet the death in service and the most vulnerable cases, the most vulnerable cases by the 12th and the ill health retirement cases by the 27th?
So we are on track to hit the ill health retirement by the end of the month, and we are on track to hit the death in service by the end of the month. So to your exact question, no, we won't hit the death in service as per you've just read out. We will get to the death in service by the end of this month based on what we know today, based on the cases we know about today, and that statement will have been made based on the cases we knew about at that point.
Well, two particular issues then. First of all, there are two elements of service where you now say you've got targets to hit. Could you give the committee a timeline for when you will hit all the service performance targets that you are contracted to hit?
So the SLAs that are contained within the contract? Yeah, so we will get the service back into the service levels once we've cleared all the priority cases.
Can you give us target dates for all those?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
And you'll write to the committee within the next week.
I think we have a committed date to return to SLAs by the end of March.
On all SLAs?
So to get all SLAs?
On all contracted SLAs.
By the end of March?
By the end of March.
Right. The problem is we keep hearing of two get-outs. One, all the cases we know, but you're never going to know all the cases, are you? More are going to come out. So that's the get-out, but saying, well, actually, we didn't know about those, we can't deal with them within that time frame.
The SLAs, as Chris gave earlier, have timelines by which we must have completed activities. So to get back into those SLAs, it means that we will have taken and processed a case within
5 days on each step, or 10 days.
If you don't know about them now, but you know about them by the middle of March, then most of the SLAs you should deliver and deal with those cases by the end of March, shouldn't you?
Yes.
So
so not knowing about them now is not an excuse for not dealing with them.
So if the SLA is measured from when the member raised the case, so if the member raised the case in the past and it's been closed and we don't know about it, it's difficult to. If that's in the past, it's in the past and it's difficult. What I would say is that my business is absolutely committed to making sure that every member gets what they deserve when they deserve. So we will continue to search the records, look for people, look for cases that have been closed that shouldn't have, look for records that are there, and we will continue to work on that, because that is the way that you make sure the service is excellent, instead of just doing you could hit the SLA by just doing the new case that came in and ignoring those old cases, but I do not want to run a service like that. I want to run a service that is good for everybody.
It's a general commitment with no exclusions. Okay. Just one further point, because you've dropped into the conversation another potential excuse, as long as the paperwork is there. All right. The pensioner or prospective pensioner has got to provide their necessary paperwork. The problem is, they've also got to rely on you processing the paperwork. So if you don't do your bit of it, you can then say, well, actually, the paperwork's not there, so we don't have to meet those targets.
Let me just put... what I'm really clear about is we're not here to make excuses, and we're not claiming excuses here. What we're making the commitment to is to run the service in the way that it's designed to hit the SLAs. So when we use words like, if the paperwork is there, we are finding in some cases that where a case has been raised by a member of the scheme, not all the paperwork has been provided by either the member or the department, and therefore putting the case together. So it's not meant to be a caveat or a cop-out or a sidestep. It is just giving details of how the process works. So to hold us to account, absolutely right, to deliver the service to the SLAs and to the contractual standard, and we absolutely are standing by that commitment.
Right. So at the end of March, everyone's going to be happy.
I would love everybody to be happy. What we've got to work to is make sure they're receiving the service that they should expect.
We hope it's right. I've just saying, I've had one constituent just text me and say, why should we believe a word they say?
I understand that. As you might expect, we have a large number of ex-civil servants in Capita because they were cheapied across from civil service activity into Capita. So I have to talk to members of my own team as well as members of the public. I am receiving heartbreaking emails from people who have served this country, and a lady who 44 years service, exemplary service, who should expect to retire properly. And we do not step away from any of that. As I said at the start, we may not have owned the backlog, but we own this problem, and it is for us to solve this problem. It is the top priority across Capita Group. We are putting everything in behind this because I have to look those pensioners in the eye.
Just one thing, voluntary exit schemes, are you on top of that one now? Because that's clearly a big issue for departments and individuals, because reorganisations of departments often depend on this.
Yes.
Individuals want to know where their future is.
We inherited on the first week we took over the service. We inherited a list of the voluntary exits that needed to be done in this financial year for the government. We've worked closely with the task force to actually refine that list and identify those cases that need to be done. The priority 1 and priority 2 cases on that list will be completed in this financial year, and that is as agreed with the Cabinet Office.
So we have a joint plan with the Cabinet Office to deliver the voluntary exit schemes.
The Cabinet Office are happy with that.
We
Yes.
speak to the Cabinet Office every day, and they track us against the performance on that.
We are working absolutely hand in glove, and we're incredibly grateful to the Cabinet Office and the Permanent Under Secretary from Second POS from HMRC, who's working with us incredibly closely to help us resolve this and to work with each of the government departments to make sure we tie all this together.
And I really want to get clarity, absolute clarity on this, because in that same letter from the Permanent Secretary to me on the 2nd of February, she said there are 3,400 members due to depart under the voluntary exit schemes, that quotations and all payments need to be completed by the 21st of March 2026. And as she says, Capita is unable at this stage to guarantee that this date will be met to allow all of those members to exit employment and claim their pension payments. Now, this is pretty important. They want to know whether they're going to accept these voluntary exit schemes or not. So when will that category of voluntary exit schemes be resolved?
Working with the departments, that number that we inherited is now 3,663, of which 2,163 are quotes. Since we took over, we have completed 841 quotes and 502 awards, and at our current trajectory of completions, we will have all of those priority 1 and priority 2 cases completed in the agreed timeline by the middle of March.
What about the rest?
So that is the ones that we've agreed, that of that original list, these are the ones that the government have agreed that are actually required.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. Sarah Olney, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to pick up on under the original agreement, the Capita was going to have a lower headcount than my CSP because of the productivity gains that you expected to implement. So alongside this backlog, which we've just been hearing you didn't expect and is obviously causing you trouble to work through, you have also rode back on how the IT system that you were going to implement, and then a simplified system was put in place from the 1st of December, simplified from the original commitment. So can you talk us through the extent to which you expect, in due course, backlog notwithstanding, to be able to deliver the productivity gains that you promised?
Yes, Chris will give you the details of the plan. It's reinforcing that right now, reducing headcount until we get the service into SLAs is absolutely not the right thing to do.
I understand that, and that's why I'm parking, if you like, the issues around the backlog, which have been fully explored and explained. But nevertheless, this point about productivity gains from you had already, I think, rolled back on what you were going to deliver before.
Well, at this stage, trying to achieve the productivity gains is just not. So we'll get this into good order.
Yes.
And then we have a detailed plan.
So on the system, as part of the transition, we agreed with Cabinet Office and they approved splitting the features of the system, and this is some of the advanced features that are on the portal, between the 1st of December and the end of March. So those, what we call day 2 features, will come at the end of March. All of the day 2 features are incremental to what the members had before on the previous administrator.
Is it additional features that they wouldn't have had before you took the scheme over?
So I'll give you an example. By the end of March, we will have a Track My Case feature where the member will be able to go on the portal and see in detail where their case is and what is happening to it. So that feature will be available in the next few weeks. And on the productivity point, we do all of our recruitment and staffing based on a scientific analysis of the expected incoming cases and the handling time of those cases. So we always intended that on day 1 we would have the right staff in place to handle the cases as we saw them. And as you can see by our recruitment, we had the TUPE staff and recruited staff. As we continue, we will always ensure that we have the right number of people to provide to do the cases that are incoming once we're through this and into normal service. The technology that we have put in place, the co-pilot reading the incoming messages, caseworkers get a co-pilot reads all the attachments and documents for a case and that gives them a summary at the start. The technology in the processing is all things that are working. As you evolve a new operation, you look at the end-to-end handling time of a case and you go through and you involve and improve every step along the way, and that's the process that we will undergo or are starting to undergo now, but is the core part of deriving that productivity out.
The intention is to give the members, not the intention, the commitment is to give the members the sort of service that is provided by banks and other financial institutions with the ability to self-serve, to see I have a pension app on my phone that allows me to see how much is in my pension fund, against my projected retirement date, what size that pension fund will be, and what sort of annual income that might deliver me. So those are the sorts of features that we'll be deploying so that it will take away for the need to phone and therefore increase productivity. Those sorts of features, it's important to get hold of the service. Even had we not been expecting a backlog, the intention was to deliver those additional features once we had control of the operation. So we will be deploying those.
Can I just ask you about that? So once you had control of the operation, so you were expecting to have control of the operation from day 1, and therefore that's when it would have been delivered?
No. So we would never intended to have big productivity gains on day 1. So the productivity gains were always intended as you go through the operational speed to competency in the curve. So no, we never intended on day 1 to have significant operational gains.
When do you intend?
So that we will always ensure that members are getting the service they deserve first. So those gains will happen as and when the members receive their service. It is.
So you're not expecting to be able to deliver the productivity gains you planned until after you've worked through the backlog, is that what you're saying?
We will, as part of working through the backlog, we will look to reduce the handling times and make ourselves as efficient and as effective as possible, because it is beneficial to resuming the backlog. But until the service is in a good state and the backlog is then all of the considerations of how many people, that stuff is not necessary. What's necessary is to give the members the money that they deserve as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Chris, I wanted to clarify something very important you said earlier on. You said the best way for customers to reach you is via your website using the contact section. My excellent committee staff have looked at this and they've found that it's very difficult. Will you put out a clear mention of this on the main page of your website today so that it is clearly visible?
We absolutely will. So on the main page, it's at the very bottom, and we are at the moment getting that amended so that it's at the very top.
There is a software person right now moving it.
Yes, moving it.
When can we expect it will be done?
I need this committee.
As fast as we can do it.
I want a deadline so I can hold you to it.
Yes.
So just to be clear, on the website at the moment, it's at the very bottom.
Yes,
it says
I can
contact
see
us. We the technical team are working on either moving it or providing a link at the top.
You've already said that. But when will it be done?
We'll come back to you this afternoon with an answer.
Send us a message this afternoon.
Yeah.
And we'll put it in the transcript. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, Matt, did you want to ask your question, or was it?
Yes. A couple of hopefully relatively quick ones. So thank you for that. You've spoken a lot about the staff that you've got in order to be, and the modelling that you're using to do it to, in terms of anticipated workloads and so on. So I just wondered if you feel at the moment you have the right resources that you need, both in terms of quantity and quality, to be able to tackle the workload that you've got going on at the moment.
Everything that we need has been, so Capita PLC has put in every person and every available resource, and HMRC, we've worked with HMRC on the available resource to assist us. In terms of quality, we have, as part of the transition, we designed an onboarding process that includes onboarding, either that to help people get up to speed on the scheme rules or the processes or the systems, and so therefore everybody is onboarded in that way. What we have done is we've spent some time analysing the end-to-end process, and we talked about paperwork earlier, and I think that's probably the wrong way to think about it. We have to comply with the complicated scheme rules on everything we do, so there are many steps in every process. We have worked on identifying which of those steps require my highest experienced, most senior pensions administrators, and which of those steps can be done by people without pensions expertise, but with them. So we've divided those steps into places so that we can utilise the staff we have to get the cases moved as fast as possible and ensure that the bits that require really complicated pensions knowledge are done by our experts, and our experts are only doing those bits. Any time I have needed anything or any technological resource, then Capita PLC or our technology partners have provided that immediately. So this is not a question of needing the resource. This is a question of ensuring we deploy that resource to comply with the scheme rules and make the processes.
It's the top group priority. Therefore, anything Chris is asking for, he's getting, and he's not being left short.
That's great. And will that still be the case once the surge staff are removed and you're existing on a sort of business?
Until this operation is hitting SLAs, that's step one. Then it needs to hit the higher standard that we expect of the services that we deliver. I have this phrase, the sound of perfect service is silence. So when this service is silent, because everybody is getting what they need, we will then be thinking about how do we restructure the operation to make sure we're getting the productivity gains and making sure that it's running in the right way. But the sound of perfect service is silent, and this is absolutely not silent, and therefore we will keep at this until we have it in the right shape.
Richard, when will it be silent?
So Geoffrey, it's very hard for me to commit. What we've committed to is hitting the SLAs. We then need to, and I think to the point about trust, We have to work to gain the trust of the members of the scheme so that they utilise the scheme in the way that it is designed. So promising a date at which our customer promoter score will be really hard is very hard for me to do, and I don't want to commit to a date that I then can't keep. But what I can do is commit to ensure and keep reporting on the complaint backlog that we're dealing with an intention of continually reducing it. Capita's reputation through this process, as you would well know, is not where it needs to be. We are not happy about how this is running. We're not happy about the performance of what we're delivering. I deliver services that serve just about every citizen in the UK in some form or another. And back to my point that the sound of perfect service is silence, most of the committee will not be aware of all the services that we provide because they run and they run effectively. We will get this service into that same condition as those other services.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, so just one last final point, if I may. They do say the sound of silence is golden, so apologise for shattering that. But just in terms of dates and the productivity and the tech that we were talking about, do you still expect to have delivered the promised levels of automation and AI that you're talking about by March 2026? Presumably that's not a confirmed date now.
All of the features for the portal, all of the features for technology, all of the AI tools will be in. We will continue, as you would expect us to continue to develop the handling times and change the automation, improve the automation. This is a service of continuous improvement. So there will still be some improvements and some developments. And I am absolutely focused on the features that make the experience for the member better and for the tools that will allow us to process more cases. So that's my focus, but it'll be a continuing evolution of systems, as you would expect afterwards.
With the current backlog, you wouldn't expect to be hitting a March 2020.
We will hit the March 20. We will hit the features that we've promised for day 2 will come in at that point. The underlying processes of making sure that we continually improve it. We might add more automation. All stuff will still happening, so they will still be happening. But the features on the website, the features on the portal, all the things we've promised will be in.
Day 2 is a contractual term. They will be there by the end of March.
Okay. Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I suppose the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You will obviously want to reduce the number of staff as soon as you can, and you will want to get these AI in process as soon as you can. To do that, the 150 HMRC staff won't want to be there any longer than they need to be. You're on 750 staff, you say, at the moment. I think that includes 150 HMRC, but that is a very much bigger number of staff than you originally intended to. Can we have an absolute assurance from this session that you will not reduce those staff until those AI systems have been thoroughly tested and we know that they're working?
If I go further than that, we will not reduce the level of staff until this service is working, because it makes no sense to reduce those staff. We will get the service running properly. I can't speak for the Cabinet Office Surge staff, but from Capita PLC staff, we will remain resourced in order to deliver the service and get it to where it should be, meeting SLAs, meeting service expectations.
Thank you. Right.
Yes, to payments. Then I was looked at this and said that you hadn't hit some of your milestones in the transition arrangements coming up to you're taking over the scheme. And the Cabinet Office have withheld some payments.
Correct.
How much have been withheld so far?
So of the 12 original milestones, underneath that there are 91 deliverables. Of those 91 deliverables, we delivered 68 of the deliverables on Go Live. Of the remaining, 15 are post-Go Live deliverables and 8 involve testing features that, in the conversation we just had about day 2. The unpaid milestones in total, including the ones that would not be due yet, the post-Go Live ones, is 9 million.
How much?
9.9 million.
And that's when it's withheld rather than it will be with an intention from the Cabinet Office that it will eventually be paid.
When we achieve those deliverables.
Okay. So it's not really a penalty at all, is it?
This is a contractual arrangement. So as Chris has underlined, at the top level, it's about milestone payments. There are elements underneath that where we've delivered in line with those, and therefore there will be a commercial contractual conversation with the Cabinet Office at the right time.
Have you had any further penalties for your non-performance since the 1st of December?
Not at this stage. The focus right now with the Cabinet Office is the restoration of service. Once we are through that period, we will be having conversations with the Cabinet Office and the commercial team.
Right. And are the payments to you, which are due under the contract, linked to your performance and hitting your...
Yes. We don't get paid until we're delivering against SLAs.
Right. Do you get a penalty for not delivering?
So there is a monthly SLA regime, and the monthly SLA regime in normal service, the monthly SLA regime would there would be a penalty every month if you weren't delivering on the SLAs.
So clearly, we're not delivering against SLAs, so we're not getting paid.
And that payment then is not recovered down the line of the contract. It's a payment you've lost.
SLA payments,
Yes.
Okay. Just coming on then to this staff that you've had brought in and help from the Cabinet Office and elsewhere to help you do the work. Who's paying for them?
The Cabinet Office are paying for them. They were delivered, or not delivered, but surged because there was a recognition by the Cabinet Office that the backlog that we were creating was not that we got on day one was not of our making. So they've surged those resources in. Now we haven't had, and I think quite rightly at this stage, the focus has been return of service. The focus hasn't been sitting down with the Cabinet Office to have detailed commercial conversations about who's paying for what. That just wouldn't be the right use of time. The right use of time is restoring service.
So at this stage, the Cabinet Office are paying for all the staff?
Yes, we're not directly paying for them right now.
Right. And probably having no intention to pay either.
That's not, as I say, we're not having those conversations right now. And I don't think it's the right thing to have those conversations.
The justification is simply that you did not know what you were taking over, even though you'd had 2 years to look at it.
And if I may, at this stage is not about justification. This is about owning the problem, getting the process back up and running. There will undoubtedly be conversations once we've got back to the right service levels. But it wouldn't be the right thing for my teams to be engaged in conversations about penalty payments and payments we're not being paid because we haven't hit SLAs. Milestone payments for things that haven't been delivered have been withheld. That is quite correct and proper. And then conversations about the cost of the operation after that is a conversation for that should happen once we have restored service.
What is the technical employment position of people who have been seconded from the Cabinet Office to you? Are they effectively operating as your employees?
No.
Oh, so if they make mistakes then, any comeback will be on the Cabinet Office, would it?
So they are operating under heads of terms that we've agreed with the Cabinet Office, where we are responsible for the output. Everybody's work is reviewed and peer reviewed. So we have 4 eyes reviews on all the work, and our systems and processes ensure that the quality is checked. So we are responsible for the outcome of the work done.
So if there were any errors which caused issues for a pensioner, probably financial issues, and the comeback would be on you, even if those issues were contributed to by staff from the Cabinet Office?
If they were the surge people acting as part of the clearance, it's our responsibility to ensure that the items are correct, yes.
Yes.
When are you going to sort out all the financial arrangements with the Cabinet Office?
I think the most important thing now is that we get the money to the members that deserve the money for their service to this country. And so we are absolutely focused on that. And as Richard said, we will agree the commercials.
We'll sit down with the Cabinet Office at the right time. It's not a conversation that we will seek to drive. As I say, we're seeking and utterly focused on restoring service.
Thank you very much. In addition to all this other stuff, you've taken on the remedy contract.
taken on
The remedy contract.
Yes.
Now that, as we know, is going to be incredibly difficult to deliver. What SLAs have you got for that scheme?
To be absolutely clear, what has happened at the moment is that there is two parts to remedy. So there is remedy work in progress, so that is remedy cases that MyCSP didn't complete, and then there is remedy, which is complex cases which weren't started. We have got a statement of works with Cabinet Office to do an impact assessment of how we should resolve those complex cases. We have not yet finalised the contract to remedy the cases. So we are working with Cabinet Office in partnership to work out the plan to then address all of those cases.
Time is marching on since the court case. So those people have a right also to expect a reasonably prompt service.
Yes.
When do you expect that contract to be resolved?
So we are looking to, as soon as we have got through this thing here in March, we're looking to then begin work on all of the remedy cases.
So the total value of the contract was 239. Have you any calculations in your own mind how much you're going to make out of this contract? Because it will be less than that, won't it?
Yeah, no, again, that's not our priority right now, and it would be the wrong priority. And so there is no activity working that out. Back to this point that we don't get paid if we're not hitting the SLAs. It's obviously in our interest to get those SLAs to return to service. In doing so, that serves the members. So members are the priority, deliver the SLAs for the members, and we're not wasting any time figuring out what the financial impact is on us right now.
Yeah. No, I get that. But what about the consequentials? Things like late interest payments and so on. Are they all covered by the contract, or is there still some fuzziness over the consequentials? Hardship payments and so on. Are these all covered by the contract, or is the negotiation to be had there as well?
So we are working with the pension scheme and HM Treasury as to the correct way to deal with interest on late payments to members, and we are on individual cases where there has been a problem with the administration, as you would in normal circumstances. If there is fault, we are processing an ex gratia compensation payment as part of that. The interest on the late payments has been. We stand ready to do that, and it's been agreed with Treasury. We are working on that.
Interest on late payments, hardship payments.
So
any other consequentials?
No, I think that's so. The hardship payment, we're working with our partners at Cabinet Office on the way that the hardship payments are working and how that should happen, and making sure that people who should have received money get their money as fast as possible, or a hardship loan.
Okay, well, you've given us a lot of information today. You've particularly given us quite a lot of milestones and dates. Can we be assured that if we invite you back, probably not too long after the end of March, to see how you've got on, that you'd be more than happy to come back?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Well, can I thank, unless any members have got other questions? No. Can I thank you for your information this morning? I repeat, on behalf of those scheme members, we want to see these problems resolved as quickly as possible, and I get the sense this morning that you do too. It's really important, particularly there are some really difficult cases out there, as we've already mentioned. Some of them, I suspect that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we've been talking about this morning. And as my excellent deputy says, it shouldn't really be necessary for a Member of Parliament to become involved. It should be absolutely the last resort. Not to say that we're not more than happy to do that on behalf of our constituents. It just simply shouldn't be necessary if the scheme is working properly. So I think we probably will want you back sometime later in the year to see how this is all working out. But in the meanwhile, can I thank you very much for what you've said this morning and being here and answering our questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I should say an uncorrected version of the transcript will be available in the coming days, following which no doubt we will wish to make a report with recommendations, and I suspect perhaps sooner than that we'll be writing to either you or the Cabinet Office or both, maybe if we've got any further queries that haven't been covered this morning.
And if I can reiterate one last time, my apologies to all members of the scheme. We own this problem and we will fix it.
We will look forward to hearing that promise honoured. Thank you very much indeed.